Hey, Motorman here, and this is from our class from last Sunday. And what you're seeing is certainly not the worst rider we've ever had in the class. In fact, I don't think he's even in the five or the top five. But what the problem with this rider is he took the Motorcycle Safety Foundation course, and then he went out and bought an Ultra. And now he's, of course, extremely intimidated by the Ultra, so he really can't practice on it. And he comes to my class hoping that I can turn him around or work wonders with him, I guess. And his problem is, by the way, he rented a Road King for this class because it's the closest we could come to his Ultra. It's really the same bike, but about 50 pounds lighter. But his main problem is at the MSF course, they put him on little tiny motorcycles, some even on 125 grams, which is a mini bike. And you could virtually go through the MSF course never learning how to use the friction zone or never learning how to slip the clutch for best control. You could actually ride those little bikes through the course with the clutch fully extended and really not have a problem. But when you try to do that on a big bike like this, that's when you run into problems. So that's the main thing we see here, is that he has no conception of how to use the clutch and throttle. The only thing he can do with the clutch is start off from a stop without stalling. But that's not enough. When you're making tight, low-speed maneuvers, you must be in the friction zone. You must be slipping the clutch. Some people like to use that word, slipping the clutch. That's basically what you're doing. You need to turn your head and eyes and look only where you want to go. And you should have a little bit of pressure on the rear brake while you're learning these techniques. The better you get at the clutch and throttle, eventually you'll be able to eliminate use of the rear brake. So trying to get this rider through these exercises and get that in his head, how to use that friction zone, was the most difficult thing we could do. Now here I took him for a ride on the bike. He's on the back and I'm riding it through so he could see what it's supposed to feel like when you're going through there, because what he was doing is keeping the motorcycle as straight up as possible and fighting it. So me taking him for a ride helped a tiny bit with his speed, but still he's really just at idle. He's got the clutch all the way out, barely, if ever, touching the rear brake and trying to turn the motorcycle. He's fighting against the very design of the motorcycle when he does that. Now here's another rider who had a little bit of a problem. He's an experienced rider, but he had moments of brilliance. So when a rider has moments of brilliance, that means he gets it perfect. I know that eventually within the class, within the 4 or 5 hours, we can get those moments of brilliance together and have him do pretty good through every exercise. Now, of course, he's not perfect. You can get through every exercise without error. You won't be perfect, but if you continue to practice what you learned in this course after you leave, you will eventually get to just about perfection. Nobody's perfect. Even I make a mistake every once in a while. I never drop the bike, but I could go a little wide or lean the bike a little bit further. So that's common. But this rider, because he come down from another state up north, he nearly needs one-on-one lesson on a smaller bike. Later on, we're going to put him on a Sportster, but he's really struggling with this bike because he doesn't know how to use that clutch and throttle, doesn't know how to coordinate it properly, and that goes back to his initial training. When you're 60 years old and you try to learn how to ride a motorcycle, it's probably going to take you a little bit longer. You could do it, but you're going to need some one-on-one lessons when you move to a bigger motorcycle. And unfortunately, I can't give that to him because he's out of town and won't be able to come back probably for 6 or 7 months, and he won't be able to practice. That's a shame. Now, the next exercise is going to be even more difficult. So when you haven't mastered the friction zone and your head and eyes, etc., here, you get to the next exercise, it's going to be even tougher. So I decided to put him on a Sportster and try that. Fortunately, it didn't help very much. Here we're in the intersection. The first thing we do there is practice the U-turn. Now notice he's going to be able to make it through simply by turning the handlebars, got the clutch fully extended, and he does make the U-turn, but this is not really helping him because he has the clutch all the way out. And I notice here too, he's even having a problem coming to a smooth stop. That's something we're going to go into a little bit later on with him, because you got to be able to stop that motorcycle. No question about it, out on the street. The problem with that Ultra, though, that he has at home, he can't even practice on that bike because he's really afraid of it, as well he should be. He needs to get a smaller bike, and he needs some one-on-one lessons probably on the Sportster, but because he's from out of town, unfortunately, he won't be able to do that with him unless he comes back to Florida and spends a couple of days here with me on the Sportster rather than the Road King or any other motorcycle. Here, as you see, the bike is out of control. He lets the clutch out all the way, goes out of the exercise. And you can't have that out on the street. If that happened on the street, you'd be going into a guardrail. Here, because he had the clutch all the way out, he just kept on going. The momentum carried him across the wrong side of the road. I tried him running the entire intersection. Sometimes this helps riders because they get to make a series of U-turns and build up a little bit of rhythm. Unfortunately, once again, because he didn't have the basics down, he's still having serious problems. Keeping the bike as straight up as possible is the worst thing you could do. It's like you're fighting the design of the motorcycle. He's got to put a foot down. Again, he makes the turn, and he almost keeps on going. If there was another bike there, he could have hit the bike, so I can only have one rider at a time going through this. Generally, we have every rider going through, but with him, I had to hold the other riders up and allow him to go through by himself because there was no telling what he would do since he's not in complete control of the motorcycle because he's not using that friction zone of the clutch. There were some improvements, but this is a person who actually needs at least 4 hours of one-on-one lessons before he's really going to get it. Again, he runs, if that was the road, he'd have run off the road. The rider on the blue bike that you see here, he's really got this nailed. This rider is improving his skills greatly as we go along. The rider on the blue bike practiced the exercises from my video. All he needed was just a little bit of refinement. You could see he's whipping through the course. It's actually almost too easy for him. I had to make some of the things even narrower just to challenge him a bit. In a few minutes, we're going to take this rider on the Sportster, and I'm going to have him do some one-on-one with my other instructor. And first, we're going to teach him how to stop smoothly because that's really important. Out on the street, if you don't know how to stop that motorcycle, you're in deep trouble. So we worked on some braking with him and had him go through the offset cone weave, the previous exercise on this motorcycle, and that helped a bit. But once again, without mastering that friction zone, everything becomes so much more difficult, if not impossible. I let him go through the intersection one more time and watch what happens here. He looks at that cone, clutch all the way out, runs over the cone, panics, and drops the motorcycle. Take a look at this. This is the best combo special. It includes Ride Like a Pro, the book, Surviving the Mean Streets, the brand new Ride Like a Pro experience video, Ride Like a Pro on the Tail of the Dragon, and that's 2 videos, and Shortcuts to Riding Like a Pro, and we throw in a Ride Like a Pro patch. And how much is that, camera girl?
$84.75, ships out priority mail for a limited time.
We say limited time because we've had 3 increases in shipping just this past year, and we're about to get another one, so it's not going to be too much longer where we could eat the shipping for you. But if things are tight, maybe that $5 a gallon is getting to you, we do have something for you as well. You can get these 2 videos if you want just these Shortcuts to Riding Like a Pro and Surviving the Mean Streets, 2 for $20 plus $5 shipping.